Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the February 28th Town of Lewisboro Town Board meeting. For the folks here, you have exits to your left and to your right in case needed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start with public comment. We have one person who has signed up, Robert Whitaker. If you can just state, Robert, your hamlet.
Right. I'm Bob Whitaker. Can you hear me at all? Yeah. Power.
Is he good? Or you turned it off?
Turn it off. Welcome to the universe.
Okay.
That's good.
I'm Bob Whitaker. Nature has, of course, caused climate change in the past, but almost always that change occurs slowly enough for most lifetime to death. That's the critical difference now. According to NASA and others, we are right now warming the planet almost 30 times faster than nature. Even faster warming projected this century if we don't stop burning fossil fuels now. We walk about 3 miles an hour. So it's the difference between walking and racing the car 90 miles an hour down the highway. And life, animals, and plants can't possibly evolve and adapt that fast. Not a chance. They're wired for change at 3 miles an hour, not 90. And if they don't survive, what happens to humans? They're so completely dependent on them for our own survival. It's called an existential threat. A threat to our very existence as a species, because it is. We are in the midst of causing the 6th mass extinction. If we don't stop, biologists say that by the end of this century, almost half of all animal species, mammals, birds, fish, you name it, almost 50% will be either extinct or on the brink of extinction, never to exist again. We're not talking tens of thousands of years from now. We're talking decades. Just 50 years, by 27, land that currently supports 1/3 of its entire population is projected to become, quote, unsuitable for human habitation, comparable to the Sahara Desert, forcing billions of people to choose between migration or death. We're talking 1/3 of Earth's entire population literally becoming refugees within just 50 years. These are just 2 of the many catastrophes, impacts climate change will have on our children and grandchildren, and their children and grandchildren, and their children and grandchildren. And let's react to protect their future now, while we still can. Finally, our prayers are with the Ukrainian people tonight. I hope they know that most Americans support their fight for freedom and see Vladimir Putin for what he is, not a talented genius, but a brutal dictator and murderer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else here? Questions or comments?
I have somebody on
Okay.
Zoom. I have Carol's iPhone. If you could state your name, I'm asking you to unmute.
It's Carol Cernak at Farby Farm in South Salem. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is basically addressed to Peter Ripperger. Richard Sclaren is the liaison to the highway department. Tony as our supervisor, and who has recently responded in social media to my concerns, and to our town attorney, Greg Falchetti. So my question is, who owns the mulch timber pile at the Salt Dome site? Our highway supervisor has recently stated in recent correspondence to a citizen that Hickory Homes and Property owns it. If in fact that is true, why has the Highway Department issued an RFP to remove something that doesn't belong to our residents? Why are the taxpayers on the hook? Additionally, if the town is willing to pay to have a product removed that it doesn't own, why not offer it to taxpayers and local businesses? Reduce the volume, therefore reducing the cost to taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So next we have communications. So I have a few items. I'll start with, this is from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. So we received a letter and and their facility inspection form for the Wild Oak Sewer District. And basically, it says here that there was a comprehensive inspection of the reference facility that was performed on December 21st, 2021 for the purpose of evaluating compliance with the State Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, otherwise known as SPDES or SPDES, and Article 17 of the Environmental Conservation Law. They provide the inspection, the detailed inspection report. And it says here that we have, let's see, yeah, please refer to the attached copy of the inspection report for detailed information and note the overall satisfactory rating. So they're either going to give you a not satisfactory or satisfactory, marginal, or unsatisfactory. And so we did receive a satisfactory rating for Wild Oak Sewer District and the wastewater treatment plant.
How often are those inspections done?
I believe this is done annually. I believe. Yeah. And this is the second one also from the DEC. It's regarding the Oak Ridge sewage treatment plant. Similar letter. This was an inspection that was performed on November 3rd for the purpose of evaluating compliance with SPDES permit and Article 17 of the Environmental Conservation Law. The inspection report provides the details and noted that we have a satisfactory rating for Oak Ridge wastewater treatment plant as well. And then the third notice that I received here in the mail was from, actually, I'm sorry, there's a second one related to this is from the Department of Health, Westchester County Department of Health. And it's a 2022 certificate to operate the community water supply for Oak Ridge Water. And basically this says that they have certified the plant for operations, and enclosed is the permit to operate the community water supply, valid until December 31st, 2022. And the last one I have here is also from the DEC, and it's regarding the South Salem salt storage shed located at 81 Spring Street, South Salem, also known as the Salt Dome. On November 30th, 2021, a site visit of the above referenced facility was performed to investigate complaint about improper salt storage. Please refer to the attached copy of the inspection report for detailed information. During the inspection, it was revealed there is no salt outside the storage shed. Facility has no violations. I think we had mentioned this in the prior meeting, but we got the formal letter in the mail just last week or week and a half ago. So that's all I have for communications. Consent agenda. Like to motion approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, new business. We'll start with Cityscapes presentation. Susan Raybold, if you are online, please raise your hand on Zoom. And our town clerk will let you in.
Okay, there she is.
Oops. Oop,
Hello.
here.
Hi, Susan.
We're good?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you make it louder,
Start the
Sean?
recording
Or is
again?
it better now?
Great.
Okay, we're good.
All right.
Um,
And am I able to share my screen for the presentation? Can you
You-
see the screen if I share it?
Yes, but before you start, Susan, I want to make
Sure.
sure that I can display it here for the folks in the room.
Mhm.
Um,
You want me to go ahead and share my screen?
There we go. Okay. Okay, Susan, so I will let you, first, just a summary. So Cityscape, this is the next task during the wireless master plan project. And the objective here is to focus, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but I'm going by what's on the email exchange we had. It's to focus on the gaps, maps, poll responses, and review of the community's wireless communications regulations.
That is correct.
Okay, great. So should we start with your polling zoning presentation or?
Sure,
you
that'd be
tell me.
great. Yes, thank
Okay.
you very much. Thank you for having me this evening, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I had to change my travel plans at the last moment. But as you were mentioning, the last time I met with you all, I showed you a series of maps that talked about your wireless telecommunications infrastructure and where it's located. And just as a brief introduction, this study that we're doing is being paid for by the county, and it's a 7 community-wide wireless telecommunication master plan that looks at the infrastructure used for wireless telecommunications. It is not a broadband study. This is specifically a study that addresses the infrastructure for your wireless phones and other wireless devices that you use on that subscription, and how the service and connectivity is in the area. And you have the map in front of you on the right shows the boundaries of your community, and you have 7 facilities that are shown. One of them is proposed and not built yet, and you have a number of sites around the perimeter within the 1-mile boundary of the community's zoning jurisdiction that we also include in your specific study area for Lewisboro, because the propagation from those sites affects the coverage in your area as well. So once we identified the gaps, we offered to put together a poll to gauge community interest and on how those gaps should be filled, the types of infrastructure that they would support. And so that's what I'm going to be focusing on now. So we offered the survey on August the 11th, and it stopped on September 7th. Now that's just for Lewisboro. Bedford's just started, and theirs is going to end shortly, but yours opened on the 11th and closed on September 7th. There's 25 questions that were common throughout the study area, and you had 477 respondents to your poll, which I was very pleased with. And those results, like I mentioned, they're intended to help guide you going forward on how to address the coverage gaps. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment because I need to go to a different screen to show you your poll results. There we go. All right, can you see? Can you see the presentation?
It is on Zoom, but not here.
Okay, it is on Zoom. So, all right, well, I will walk through the results then pretty quickly since you can't see what I'm showing you. The survey respondents were asked if they were answering the poll on behalf of themselves or on behalf of the household. And you almost had a 50-50 split. And then we wanted to know about those answering the poll. Did they live and work year-round in the town? Did they live and work, or do they work seasonally in the town? Do they work outside of the town? And 62% identified that they live and work in the town year-round. So the majority of the people answered it that way. Then they could choose how they use their service. We wanted to know how people were using their handsets and their wireless devices, and they could check all that applied. 94.3% responded that they used their wireless device for personal and recreation and leisure purposes. And then 71% identified that they used their wireless device for employment-related purposes, followed by almost 50% for educational learning, another 50% for telehealth, another 50% for smart home devices. There was only one that responded that they did not own a wireless phone. We then collected some geographic data with regards to where people live by zip code, and we did same for residents in Hamlet, and then also by area districts. And that's mostly for your purpose. The service provider that most of the people subscribe to is Verizon, followed by AT&T. We then asked how many handsets or devices that they used in their household. And by devices, we mean wireless phones, laptops, tablets, watches, any type of service or device that's not using their home internet provider to have access. And the average was very close to seven devices for the average household. We wanted to know then if the households used a network booster to enhance their wireless coverage. And 41% identified as yes, and 58% said no. The next series of questions that we asked were to help us understand qualifying levels of coverage. So the poll had answers with regards to coverage as excellent being 5 bars, acceptable being 3 bars, poor being 1 bar, and then inconsistent or not applicable. So when we asked if where they reside, how is their network coverage, you had 35%, just over 1/3, saying it was acceptable. Then you have had almost 1/3 indicating that it was poor, and just under 1/4 saying it was inconsistent. When asked how their wireless coverage is where they work, that was quite a bit varied. Your largest response was not applicable. So we determined, or sort of hypothesized, I should say, we hypothesized that the reason so many identified not applicable was One, probably because maybe they didn't work inside the town. Two, maybe they weren't working because of the pandemic at the time of the poll. Or three, that they are retired and aren't presently working outside of the home. Then your next largest response was acceptable, which is aligns with your previous question. And then again, almost as many saying poor, and then small, just under that, inconsistent. So those two questions aligned quite a bit. Then when you travel around town, we asked them what their coverage was, and the largest majority, 42%, said inconsistent, followed by poor and acceptable. So that gives us an idea of how people experience their wireless coverage. And we wanted to know next, would they rely more on their mobile device if their service was better? And 66.2% entirely agreed with that statement. We wanted to know, was the quality of wireless service important to them? 88.1% entirely agreed with that statement. So we've learned through the poll that of the respondents, wireless service is very important to them. They would rely on it more if it was better. And a third of the community experiences acceptable coverage where they reside and where they work. And then a third says it's not acceptable or it's poor. And so the next set of questions are related to what's important to them with regards to aesthetics and location. So if you're going to need more sites to have a more robust network, and recognizing that now what's important in order to have that connectivity that people want and that they would use if it were better. So when we asked the question, what is most important to you? And the choices were excellent connectivity, good connectivity with minimal and visual impact, aesthetics, or willingness to tolerate worse service and less infrastructure. Your responses were 60% identified that what was most important to them was excellent connectivity. There was 1.9% identified as aesthetics being the most important, and 35% identified good connectivity and minimal visual impact. So if you're going to add more facilities and more towers, we wanted to know, would people want taller towers in these gap areas, or were they looking to have shorter but fewer of them? Taller because you could get more infrastructure on it and then possibly have less, or shorter, meaning you would have less co-locations and then potentially more. And just over 50%, I said that they would prefer taller facilities with multiple co-locations. 26% said shorter, potentially fewer, and then 19% said they had no preference. The poll then presented a few images to show what non-concealed towers look like. They were given the choice of the monopole, the lattice, the guy, or none of the above, and 63% preferred the monopole over the other options. We then showed a series of concealed macro towers, including the monopine, a bell tower, unipole, a faux silo, flagpole, a faux water tank or fire tower, and none of the above. And 68% preferred the flagpole for the concealed facility. A base station is an existing structure other than a tower that a wireless antenna can mount to, such as utility attachments, water tanks, rooftops. And we gave options for preferences listing for base stations, and 79% chose that they would prefer for base stations a concealed rooftop attachment. And then lastly, we showed images of small wireless facilities, and 88.7% indicated that they wanted the concealed small wireless facility over a non-concealed. When given the choice to have a tower or a base station, you had the first choice by a very slight margin to be a tower, and then as a second choice, the base station. The next set of questions were to gauge public support on the location. And the choices were to have a tower or base station anywhere in the town, a tower or base station somewhere in the town other than their neighborhood, a base station only, basically anywhere, a base station only in or around my neighborhood, and then no support on public property. And the first choice there, 64.2%, was to have a tower or base station anywhere in the town. And then almost 21% said anywhere other than their neighborhood. And you only had 3.4% identifying that they did not want any of these types of facilities on publicly owned properties. So the majority then would identify that they would support using town-owned, school board, or quasi-public property. And the last question was to ascertain why they would support using public property. Was it because of the revenue that was generated? Was it to control the aesthetics and maintenance? Was it both, or was it neither? And over 50%, 56% indicated that it was both a revenue and the fact that you could control and maintain the facility better if it were on public property. You had 18% indicate that it was only for, or primarily for, controlling the aesthetics, and 17% based on revenue. Then we gave people the option to provide comments, and you did receive 128 comments. Most of those comments were geared towards encouraging you to fill the gaps as quickly as possible. A lot of people commented on the fact that when power goes out, they lose their ability to communicate. A number of people commented on having problems while traveling, not being able to reach someone, and that they want a faster, more reliable, widespread cellular communication for EMS and for the citizenry. So I will stop sharing that screen so that I can go back to the presentation. I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay. I don't think it got it. There we go. All right, so some of the summaries that I just spoke about are shown on this next slide. So you can see, as a refresher, the gap map over on the right, the upper right. And when we look at this gap map, you can see that there are large portions of the community that are in red. And even though you have a wireless tower with infrastructure on that tower, right now it's showing the coverage. But in the future, when you're going to need capacity, even though you have that site there, the capacity is going to be a problem. And so we're showing you that you're still going to need more infrastructure in those areas that are red. The areas that have no coloration are your biggest gaps because there's no coverage there now. And you're going to need something in that area to get coverage. And then the areas in green, you have coverage now, and we anticipate over the next 10 years that those areas are not going to need another facility. So when you look at that map, most of the community is going to need more infrastructure to one, either get initial coverage or to address coverage and capacity over the next 10 years. So when we compare the gaps and we look at the responses from the poll and we compare that to your zoning, we find that we think, in our opinion, that your zoning ordinance is pretty good and that it addresses a lot of the concerns that the community has, and that the industry could deploy in most areas of the community. There are some sections, though, that we want to bring to your attention, and that is that the Federal Code of Regulations now for co-locations states that a state or local government may not deny and shall approve any eligible facility request for a modification as long as it does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the structure. And your ordinance right now does not have an administrative only approval process for the co-locations. And so that needs to get harmonized with the newest federal guidelines. There's also an area that we want to bring to your attention regarding interference that you have in the ordinance regarding what would happen if you had an interference issue with one of the service providers with, say, public safety. And your solution is that you would have the ability to revoke any and all operating permits issued by the town. And the FCC is the sole regulatory agency, and you cannot supersede the FCC. And so we recommend that you modify this section to reflect that the FCC is the remedy for, and their process is the remedy for interference. And then lastly, there are a number of definitions and shot clock timelines for reviews for co-locations, new towers, small wireless facilities that are not in your ordinance because they've been adopted by the FCC post your current ordinance date. And so we would recommend that you harmonize your definitions and put in some development standards that go with those definitions. But I think the Cityscape thinks that the Antenna Advisory Board that you have has done an outstanding job with the work that they've done on the ordinance and the policies and the deployment practices so far. And your ordinance, we didn't see any standards in there that would be like barriers to entry. And that's actually uncommon. We have found a number of barrier to entry standards in some of the other ordinances that we've looked at, but we didn't see that in yours. And I know there's a lot of information and that you couldn't see part of what I was projecting, but I hope you were able to follow along. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
If you, Susan, we've been hearing a lot, and I've gotten a lot of questions that, because this is outside my area of expertise, I can't answer, about the 5G rollout. And, you hear bits and pieces and you try to read about it. And it's my understanding that the 5G technology allows for multiple smaller stations over a larger span of larger area, and reduces the need for these larger towers. So I guess my question is, for how long are these large towers going to be needed, and when, or what are we looking at as to when they may be obsolete? Because if 5G is the next up and coming technology and you don't need these large cell towers any longer, what are we looking at? We're putting up towers that are going to be obsolete in 10 years, 15 years. When can we expect 5G? Because my phone's ready now.
Those are some really good questions, and I think I need to clarify a few things. So 5G is just the next evolution in the wireless telecommunications industry. They started out with first generation, which is like the handset phone, and then 3G, which went to the smaller phone and had like the flip phone. And now we're at 5G, and the handsets have all these apps and features to them that I think we've all started to use. But the infrastructure for the 5G to work is being changed out already on the towers. We review plans every day, dozens of them by the month, hundreds and almost thousands, I think, that are showing where they're taking off existing antenna and remote radio heads and older coax cable and replacing them with new antenna. They look almost exactly the same, new remote radio heads that look almost the same, and new fiber going up to those antenna and radio heads. And that is the backbone, that remains the backbone of the wireless grid. And Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they're all making those changes to their towers and base stations now. Dish is actually launching their 5G network. It looks very similar to that infrastructure that I just described. And the small wireless facilities are like infill sites to address the small pockets of densification where you have the largest number of handsets or people using their wireless devices, where that macro cell is not able to keep up with their use. So you're going to have a combination of the macro cell and the small wireless facilities. The macro cell sites are not going anywhere. And after 5G, they'll be switched out for 6G and 7G. They are the backbone. They will be there for a very, very long time. They've been there already for 20, 30 years, more, longer in some areas. And those the small cells that I've referred, and I think what you're talking about, you'll see those in the rights of ways primarily, and in areas where you have population density. It could be from residences, it could be commercial, it could be educational, institutional, where the industry feels like they need to boost more power in that area because the macro cell can't accommodate it.
Can you give us any examples based on the study of where such pockets may exist in Lewisboro?
Let me go back to my presentation. And when you look at, I'm going to zoom in if you can see, we included a land use map. And
Susan, just to
Yeah.
confirm, because I'm not seeing your screen, is this
Okay.
the map with the red, the green, the light green, the dark green?
It is the map. It's on that polling, it's on that slide. But
Okay,
I'm looking at the map directly below that.
got it. Okay. I'll put that up here.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Tony.
So when you look at that map and you see the higher intensity land uses for residential and commercial, those would be the areas that we would identify as, or community services. Those would be target areas. So I think if you look at that map, I think around between L3 and L4 and L6, in those vicinities, I think you would see some small wireless facilities going in. That would be my first, that to me would be like my first estimation. And maybe some down by L7, because you definitely have a commercial center in that area.
Mhm.
And I think that that would also be a very likely spot. In fact, I thought when we were doing the assessments that I saw a small wireless facility being installed while we were doing assessments, but it was not. I was wrong.
So can I piggyback on this for a second
Mhm.
and say, so if this is the case, is this something where we put out an RFP saying, you know, we're ready to make our right of ways available if you've got a good proposal for these micro cells, and see what we got back? And is the market going to respond to that? Is that a realistic expectation?
Well, I think if I would encourage you to have some design standards in place that you want to see met. And then I think definitely putting it out there to the industry that you have an interest in having a robust network, and that you want to see the capacity and coverage improved, that you're willing to work with them, that you would probably, that would be a welcoming sign. Yes. That's
Okay.
actually what our next step would be. After we finish with these presentations, I have North Salem to do next week. And then Bedford should be wrapping up their poll. And I'll do a similar presentation with the town of Bedford. Then all of the mini studies will have been presented. And when we look at the area as a whole, we hope to be able to use that for or help you create that message to send out to the industry that you see these areas and collectively you want to bring them in. All of the communities so far have been wanting to see and promote, wanting to see more infrastructure, wanting to get more connectivity, and wanting to get that message out,
Susan,
but also in a responsible way. So not just,
Right.
haphazardly.
So Susan, in the poll, was there any way to determine where the respondents in the poll lived throughout the town? Where could you tell whether most of the people responded from a certain section of town, or was it dispersed throughout the town? Or
I have not taken it to that level yet. And I'm not sure that we will, because we don't have a way to tie in those zip codes. And I don't have the local knowledge that you do. I think when you look at it, you'll be able to identify very quickly. But the point of this exercise that we did was to really gauge, was the community willing to support bringing in more infrastructure? Was it of value to them? And what would it look like if they did want to see improvements? And so I think we've addressed all of those questions or that we had fairly well.
Just for clarification, I know when you were addressing the question about people desiring better coverage in the area in which they reside versus the area in which they work. I know you indicated that you don't have the local familiarity with the area as we do. Lewisboro tends to be, it is majorly residential. There's very little business district, and those are in pockets. So I think the result that you're seeing in that response has to do with the fact that most of the people who answered both live and work from home. So that's why the not applicable from work seemed to be, you got more of a response of not applicable from work because they happen to be working from home. So when they answer the residential question, of course, most of us would really love to have better cell service from home because that's where most of us are now working. And I found it interesting that the responses that you got indicated that most people didn't care what it looked like or where it was as long as they could have extra coverage. And I think we found that not to be the case in the proposals that we had the past year. And most people cared quite a bit what it looked like and cared quite a bit where it was located. And so I think it's that is still going to be the case. And I understand that these towers must go in. So it's going to be an interesting process.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, Andrea, I know we had similar conversations with the Cross River Tower before it went up, and there was a lot of opposition, local opposition. But once it did go up, and they saw that folks had service, it changed the perception, or the folks are more in favor of the fact that the tower did go up and that they had service, especially around the school campus. So
That's
it
true,
worked
but
both ways.
I'm also aware of residents that no matter how much notice went out, they didn't get notice and they didn't know a cell tower was going up until they looked out their kitchen window and it was right there in their backyard.
Yeah.
And so again, there's ways that we can do better.
Yeah.
I didn't hear in answer to Andrea's question that she posed as in listening to the response. I heard that with the 5G technology being rolled out, the existing cell towers are not going anywhere, but that didn't answer the question as to, so we can modify what we have to bring the 5G technology. But what I didn't hear is when it comes to new cell towers that we may have to do, are we left with the only viable option to accomplish the end game is that we have to have traditional towers. And what Andrea's question was, is that going to be the situation for the foreseeable future? Or are we investing in additional infrastructure that after a decade or more is going to become obsolete? So we shouldn't go down that route. Well, that's at least how I understood your question. Okay. Can we kind of get an answer to that one?
Sure. Thank you for clarifying. The macro cells are the best way to get service into these areas because they cover large geographic areas. And so, yes, I think you need to plan for more macro cells without a doubt.
Macro cells being towers.
Towers.
Correct.
The larger towers, yes.
Right.
Yes. I think you're going to see more macro cells and a smaller number of small wireless facilities because the small wireless facilities are going to be centered in some of those areas that I mentioned. But the vast majority of your sites over the next 10 years, I would say, are going to be macro cells.
And our only delivery option for the 5G for the foreseeable future is these type of towers as opposed to something else. The technology is not going to change as far as those infrastructure investments. Is that what you're saying?
Right. 5G is that's correct. It's just the next step in the wireless evolution. And they're installing that infrastructure on their existing towers now. And they're going to be putting it on future infrastructure as it gets built.
I guess you may not be able to answer this question. This may be a question, and please tell me if I'm wrong. So why couldn't, for argument's sake, we have more smaller towers instead of fewer larger towers? And this is, of course, I think you indicated that there were some in the survey, maybe pictures were supplied for people to understand what the difference was. I personally have not seen a micro tower, so I don't know height wise, base wise, how big they are. My understanding was that they were smaller units that were attached to already existing telephone poles or utility poles and things of that nature, with a distance in between each other. Again, this is my limited knowledge of this technology, but I'm thinking that people in our community might be happier with more smaller towers than fewer larger towers.
Right. So when you're talking about a small wireless facility, those facilities are generally defined as a structure that is 50 feet or less in height. And the antenna is 3 cubic feet or smaller. And the area that is covered by that is about 450 feet to maybe a quarter of a mile at best. And that's in flat terrain. And you all have a lot of terrain, and you would have to have them very close together, and each service provider is going to want their own. So I don't know that and that's not the footprint that the industry is going to deploy. They're going to want to deploy the macro cell, which is what you have already on your 7 sites. Those are all macro cell facilities. And the antenna has to be above the canopy of the trees. It has to be above the terrain in order for it to hand off to the next site effectively. And so if you go too low and you get below the ambient tree height, or you get below the ridge lines, then you defeat the purpose of being able to provide a broader range of coverage. And that requires then more towers
So I'm looking at an
or
image
handoff.
off of the interwebs here, and there's a couple of boxes hanging on a telephone pole. You're saying that when you go that way, each set of those boxes is specific to a given provider. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is
Like-
correct.
So in other words, where I'm seeing this, like, every several hundred feet, set of boxes, now you'd have to have, 3 sets of boxes or 4, and then I can imagine that cost-wise, it is actually not that advantageous after a point, because there's probably more maintenance that goes with those and all the rest of it. So it's not, in other words, it's not some kind of home run that can just satisfy, substitute for the big towers.
That is correct.
And Susan, to clarify the microcell, so the backbone for all these towers is a fiber circuit, correct? So they talk to each other over fiber optics
Or
the most part.
microwave. Or
or microwave, right? But in the case of our towers, they're all connected to fiber, I believe.
That's great.
And so if you put in a microcell to cover, a potential area that has a gap in coverage, that microcell also needs access to fiber. Is that correct?
Ideally, yes. Or it would need microwave. Mhm.
Okay. So that's something we would need to keep in mind, that you can't just put these anywhere without having either the microwave or the fiber connectivity.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
It's just
That
a
was
question.
a good observation. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure, you're welcome. Is there anybody on Zoom that may want to have ask a question, or anybody here? Let's start here in the room. Anybody here? Question on?
Mary had a question.
Well, no, I
course.
just wanted to recognize the fact that we have a less than flat terrain.
Oh, yeah.
And we've
yeah.
got more than a couple of trees. And a lot of people feel strongly about living in nature in our
Right.
community. But at the same time, it's a balance we're going to have to strike,
Right,
because we all need to make that emergency phone call.
right.
So we'll find a way.
Okay.
I tell my friends when I get cut off that we are topographically challenged.
I have a
So-
couple hands up.
Okay,
Okay. Are we limiting?
let's do those couple. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Adam Stolaro, I'm asking you to unmute.
Yes, hi. I'm Adam Stolaro. I'm with Cy Paget and Rozelle. I'm an attorney for several of the town residents who have been actively involved in the proposed siting of an additional tower. I wanted to ask you to go back to, Susan, if you could, to go back to your response about multiple smaller towers versus, fewer larger towers. Just to clarify, because it sounded from your answer like you were focused on, shorter micro facilities, but there are also shorter macro facilities, right? Like in the concealed flagpole or with base stations that are on buildings. So it is, I just want to confirm with you that it is possible to have, multiple shorter macro facilities that would accomplish the same thing as tall towers.
Oh, sure. But they're still taller than the small wireless facilities where I was drawing my line. So there's the macro cell and the small wireless facility. The macro cell can go on buildings, they can go on the towers, they can go on water tanks, they can mount on really, a variety of structures, but they do need to be above the ambient tree height. And they need to be above the ridge lines. We've seen them in Florida, you see them as low as 50 and 60 feet, but that's because that area is flat. And when you get into the topographic areas that you have, you're not going to necessarily need a 150-foot tower on top of your ridge line. That would definitely be terrible. You could go much lower than that. So yes, in instances, where you don't have barriers topographically, you can definitely go with a shorter tower. It doesn't have to be, 125 or 30, 40 feet, but it does have to go over those barriers that are created through the curvatures of the earth. And the macro cells are those larger antennas. And when I talk about a small cell, a small wireless facility, I'm referring to utility pole mounts that are, like I said, 3 cubic feet in volume, which is a very small antenna. And that's the definition of the federal government. So it's a much, much smaller footprint and it covers a much smaller geographic area.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, next, Barbara Mangione.
How is that?
Fine.
Okay. Susan, my question is, I live over in Golden's Bridge on Increase Miller Road. And when you drive north on Increase Miller Road and hit Route 138 and turn left as you head west, we lose service. And that's not only 138, it's portions of Todd Road also. A couple of years ago, I was at an emergency management meeting and there was a representative from I believe it was Homeland Towers at the time. And this gap was talked about at the meeting. And what the representative mentioned was that particular area where we're, on 138 and certain areas of Todd Road was actually in almost like a valley. So, topographically wise, we're in a valley, so there's not good coverage over there, which is why we lose our cell phone capability once we leave Increase Miller or that little area. So I didn't see when you put the map up, and you didn't mention any recommendations for addressing that particular area where there is no reception along that one stretch.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
maps, sure. So the maps that we do are not going to pinpoint exact roadways per se. Our maps are simulations, and they're used to really identify these large holes that are going to need to get filled. And I understand, I mean, your topography is such that you've got lots of peaks and valleys, and it is going to be very hard to get every single every parcel of land covered throughout the study area because of that. And the industry will angle their antennas to try and get some beam tilt into those areas as best they can, but they're not going to be able to cover every nook and cranny. So this is really a bigger picture of where your obvious gaps are to try and close those as much as possible. Yeah, it's going to be, it is definitely, I don't want to let everyone know that, you know, there's a solution for filling in all those nooks and crannies with the topo that you have, because that is definitely a big challenge.
Well, and I mean, there were no proposed solutions at all here. I'm not saying that in a bad sense. I'm just saying we're still at the level before, as you said, you would be then collecting all this as an area and helping us to craft some sort of request to the industry to get proposals. So we're hopefully that's down the road. We do get some proposals to address those places.
Okay, next I have Carol Cernak.
Hi, it's Carol Cernak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'd like to thank Adam for attending the meeting and supporting our future cell tower infrastructure. This, however, is the cityscape is outdated based on the fact that the town already has another piece of property that they're looking at that is between Beltonville Road and the animal South Salem Animal Center. So I'm not sure where we go with this. I appreciate everybody's thoughts. I appreciate everybody thinking that this doesn't need to be at the Salt Dome. And I appreciate everybody's thinking. So thank you.
Now, if you have sites that have developed or come to the surface since we did the assessments last year, then you just please get that to me. And when we do our final draft, we'll be able to include it.
That sounds great. I appreciate that. And, nice to keep everything up to date. So thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't change the fact that the gaps identified in these maps are still there. So, yeah.
Yeah, but Tony, it also doesn't, the cell tower at the Salt Dome doesn't solve all these problems either. So.
Well, that's what the result of this study will help us make that determination.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Carol. And Dean Travellino.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Great, thank you. I apologize. I had technical nightmare that I've just recovered from here tonight. Was knocked off and missed most of the presentation. So if my question is redundant, I apologize. But just to be clear, the survey that's referred to tonight, that was what advertised to the town or emailed out to people? It was voluntary responses, or was it a random sample? The only reason why I asked that is that obviously I think a random sampling of people gives you a much different result than if you ask motivated people that are informed in a certain subject to respond. It's sort of like the difference between a Gallup poll, how's a politician doing, or when the newspaper asks you, how's Jane Dove doing? So as a clarification, I think that's what I recall. It was voluntary responses, and that may be why you have such a discrepancy or why even like if you look at the results of that poll versus the 800 or 1,000 people that signed a petition in Cross River because they didn't like the situation of where it was put or the actual design of it, maybe that might be an explanation of some of the discrepancy. But thanks for the presentation and thanks for recording it because I'm gonna have to watch it later.
So Dean, as far as the advertisement of the poll, it was on our website, right on the main page. It was on social media, Facebook pages, and it did go out via email blasts.
Yeah, no,
But it was
I,
voluntary.
But it was voluntary, correct?
that,
Yeah,
that
it
was,
wasn't.
that was my real question.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Self-selected.
I think you've got a valid point there. In terms of, versus the random selection.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dean.
One more?
Nope, that's
No,
it.
that's it? Okay.
Mhm.
All right, well, Susan, so thank you very much. Now, in terms of next steps, I know you're waiting for to finish up the polling with the other towns. And then once you have all that information put together, we'll take the next step of your consulting work, which is, maybe you can describe that?
Sure, it'll be to provide you the draft of the master plan, and we'll accept comments from you on that. After we collect comments, we'll finalize it and we'll be done with the project.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Susan.
All right. Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night. Okay, jumping on to the next topic, the Blink electric vehicle charger, no cost option. So we're going to skip over that. We have an agreement from them. Several of us have looked at it. There's some concerns over going with a no cost option to the town. It basically takes away any control of these EV chargers that we may have, including the rates that are being charged. So we're going to table that, and ideally we are still looking at other grants opportunities for paying for these chargers, and we're going to take a closer look at that again, and hopefully we won't strike out this time. We struck out with the DEC grant application that was submitted a couple of months ago, but we're going to keep pressing ahead. But we're not doing anything with the with this no cost option with Blink, who is the manufacturer. So we'll skip over that one. The next item is the increase of fines for false fire alarms. So this came about as a result of discussions with the fire departments, where the volunteers were made up of volunteer firefighters. They're taking time to answer these false alarms. There are some that are repeat offenders. We took a look at our building code, and there's a fine schedule in there, which is very old, and it's very low. So in comparing with other towns and in talking to folks such as our building inspector and the fire departments, we think that what we want to do to deter and have people be more aware of what they're doing and how to mitigate the number of false alarms would be to potentially double the fine. So just for example, we have for the first alarm, you do not get fined. You get a letter from the building department once it's reported to them by the fire department. For the second alarm, false alarm, within the 12-month period, it's a $25 fine. So it's costing us more than that in efforts to handle that call. And then it jumps to $50 for the third false alarm within that same 12-month period, and then $100 for the fourth occurrence. And just to give you an example, where we charge $50 for the second false alarm, Bedford charges $100, and then they charge $200 for the third, and we charge currently, let's see, $50. So the discussion here is, do we want to go ahead and double the fines? I know our attorney, Greg Foschetti, put together a draft for the resolution revising the building code, the town code, to support this change. So open to discussion amongst the board members.
So we're gonna have to put this to a public hearing.
Do that, yeah. Set a
Correct.
public hearing
Right.
off of whatever version you'd like of the proposed local law. I drafted one out this afternoon.
Do we have a ballpark figure of how many false alarms we get in the community per year? Any idea?
I do not. I did not get that information.
It's not an old subject. I mean, it
It's-
is an
yeah,
old
it's
subject,
come
been
up quite a-
around for quite a while in terms of, hearing from.
Chief, that's not within a category of the police reports, right? Okay.
Only because we also can open 11. Start back at 7 a.m. So middle of the night.
Right.
I saw that there was no specific definition of what a false alarm is. It's determined by the investigation done by the fire department. Is that correct? Like a case
I have a
by
copy,
case
yeah.
basis?
Avoidable false alarm. Let's see.
It's not in the draft, it's in the original, because we're only changing.
Well, I have a copy of the code here.
117.6.
So the definition is in section 117-2. So avoidable fire alarm is the activation of a fire alarm system through mechanical failure, malfunction, improper installation, or the negligence of the owner, user, custodian, or lessee of the fire alarm system, or his or her employees or agents. And then it goes on.
So we're gonna carry the definition section
Correct.
forward, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm for setting a public hearing. It's fine with me.
Same here.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
We need a motion.
so motion to consider or to have a public hearing on, it would be 2 weeks.
Local law 1 of 2022, I guess.
Correct.
We have a
Is it May the
date
14th?
at that resolution.
How much time do we need, Janet?
The next meeting is the 14th. This isn't a zoning.
Right, you can do
So
5
we don't
days. You can do 5 days plus you're publishing, so.
Okay, so March
need-
14th.
So it'll go in this Friday.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a motion in this section.
Yeah, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next item, resolution waiving procurement policy requirements for fireworks. So this is, we had a 3-year agreement with the fireworks company, and the last 2 years we haven't had fireworks. So Dana's looking to extend, and she's waiting to hear back from the firework company to see if we can still work under the existing agreement, which would then require us waiving our procurement policy, which requires us to go out to bid. And I don't know if Dana, I think Dana might be on, and if she is, and if she wants to raise her hand and add anything to this.
She was on.
She was on.
Dana, could you raise your hand, please?
If not, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically that's the, it's a resolution to waive the
Oh.
procurement policy.
I'm asking her to unmute right
Oh,
now.
okay,
See?
okay. So we'll let her say a few words.
Oh, sorry, I was driving.
Oh, sorry, Dana.
No, that's okay. I'm here. So we've had an agreement with International Fireworks who have done the past 21 years of fireworks with us. We had 2 years left in the agreement that I would like to extend out 2 more years. With pyrotechnics, you want to deal with a reputable company. You want to deal with somebody who you're familiar with. And I just feel that it's probably the right way to go since we've used them for the past 21 years.
And just to clarify, Dana, we do have, it was a 3-year, the current agreement was a 3-year agreement, and we only used 1 of those
Correct.
years, correct? Yeah.
Correct. We put out the RFP in the winter of 2019, and we only used them in 2019.
Right.
All right. So,
So
again-
why do we, if there's still more years left on that agreement, why do we need to ask for an exception? Am I missing it?
Yeah,
There were
because she
3
needs,
years
Just
through
3 years.
2021.
Because of time down.
right, so,
Okay.
so Dana's waiting to hear back from the firework company to see if we can still operate under the existing agreement. and
even though it
utilize-
expired by its terms.
Correct.
As far as time.
Basically extend that agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Excuse the pun, Dana, so we're convinced that we're gonna get a fair bang for the buck on this still?
Well, I truly am hoping they'll hold what they agreed to 3 years ago. But to be honest with you, as we all know, supply chain issues and inflation has gone up. So I don't know how much they could deliver for what the price was back in 2019. And I've called, they are still in business, but I mean, it is their winter hours. So I have yet to hear back from them.
So our motion here should be to, within the confines of this existing contract. That's what, if they come back to you
Correct.
and they say the thing has to double, then at that point, it sounds like an RFP maybe.
Correct,
you.
correct.
I would agree with that. Go ahead, Greg.
I just would suggest that you wait for Dana to get the pricing.
Yeah.
And then if the pricing is amenable to the board, you can accept the proposal and waive the procurement policy at that time, because you're a little in the dark about what it's going to be. But if
Correct.
it's between 10 and 35,000 for the
Right.
service, there's no bidding requirements, just your own RFP on your procurement policy, which you can waive by resolution.
So maybe we could just wait for Dana to get
I would
back
wait
to
till you
you
get the
and
number.
Yeah, we were hoping to have the information by tonight, but obviously. we
Yes,
don't, so,
it's hard
yeah.
now with the information being collected over a week ahead of time for the agenda, which I understand. So sometimes I have to put something on without knowing everything. Sorry, that was my fault. I apologize.
That's okay.
No blame.
Good, now we're aware.
Dana, we're all working together.
So just let us know when you're ready to put it back on, right?
It's good. Now we
Yeah.
have the heads up, so we know what we're gonna be looking
Right.
for. It'll be
Yep.
easier next time.
Okay. Okay, good. So we'll skip that one for now. The next item is the.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dana. So we have police officer, part-time police officer Drew Canetta, who recently retired from Portchester. Is that correct, Dave? Yeah. So what we're doing here is we're accepting his resignation as a part-time police officer for the purpose of his retirement and being able to collect his retirement benefits, and then we're going to rehire him. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a resolution to do that. I mean, is there anything, I guess we can motion to,
You can,
Yeah.
do it by resolution, you need a roll call vote on it,
Okay.
but just to accept his resignation for purposes of retirement and to authorize his rehiring as a part-time
okay.
patrol officer.
Legally, do we have to do each one separately?
You could do it in one motion.
So moved.
Roll call.
I second the motion.
Oh, right.
Discussion? All in favor?
Wait,
No,
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. Okay, and then, yeah,
Andrea Rendo, yes.
yes.
Aye.
Mary Shaw, yes.
Okay, next item is a resolution authorizing use of the town park for the John Jay Youth Lacrosse fundraiser and waiving the fees. So. You move?
Andrea moves.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, Matt and Nick. I think you're both on. You didn't have to say a word. Next item is a resolution approving outdoor special events and sales permit application for the Farmer's Grind to occur on 10 Saturdays from June to October of 2022.
This
So
is-
this includes using the Vista Field parking lot
This is basically the same setup as last year, right?
Correct.
So moved.
Andrea Rendo, second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so public comment number 2. Anyone in the audience have a comment? Over Zoom? Oh, you haven't? No, go ahead, Letitia, sorry.
Good to see y'all.
Nice to see your face.
Hi, Letitia. How are you?
Finally, right? Question. Is this the time when I propose for Juneteenth to start now?
You can.
Why not?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can
Okay.
say whatever you want,
so
sure.
I would like to propose to do something for Juneteenth. Instead of doing it on the 19th, which is Father's Day, I want to do it on the 18th
Okay,
so that we can call it a celebration weekend.
right.
So that's Saturday, June 18th.
Yes.
It's the day before Father's
Right.
Day.
Do you have an idea about hours you're looking for?
I'm looking 12 to 4. I know that's a big gap, but we're playing with those numbers inside. And I wanted to know if there's a budget for it, or what do I need to do? And so
Right.
I just wanted to make sure I brought that out so that we can have a discussion about it. Me, Cynthia, and Dawn did it last year, so we wanted to make sure that we on the same path for this year.
Right. And it would be out on a true, or because I heard
I
that
was
it may
thinking
change?
If we could do the town park.
Okay,
So I know I spoke to Dana a little bit about it, so she wanted to see exactly what area I was looking for.
Right,
But if we
right.
can do the town park,
okay,
second choice is Onatra.
right.
So I guess next
Okay.
step would be to fill out an application with Dana and then submit it to us. We'll put it on an agenda item, right?
Yes.
And think about the budget, you know, like make a proposal to us if you
Okay.
could.
Because time is gonna go by fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to,
You just follow with Dana, get the application and then fill that and then submit it to us. We'll get it back on the agenda.
How was it paid for last year?
It was
We did
privately.
it.
Privately,
I did it, me, Cynthia. and
donations, some part, donations.
Is that the plan, like, or are you guys gonna
I
set
was
up like a
looking-
Venmo or some way that people in the community can donate to help?
Yeah, I would
GoFundMe?
like that. Mhm.
GoFundMe?
Where we can all,
Yes.
oh, yeah,
That would be good. Okay.
so help me, guide me, yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sounds good. Anything else?
Get that application in and then we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks,
you.
teacher.
Anybody else?
Yes. Carol Cernak, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, Carol Cernak, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I just want to address something that was spoken earlier about the salt dome inspection. The DC, as far as I'm concerned, and my previous communications with them is that it does not include the success or failure of the 5,000 gallon holding brine tank on the tarmac that was put there in place, based on the original agreement for the architecture. That tank hasn't been pumped out in 20 years. As far as I know, the DC isn't concerned about it, whether it's failing or succeeding, but it's put in place for a reason. It sits within 20 feet of a nature preserve and a stream running down to the Wakabuck River. And the other thing I would like to mention is that I'm disappointed about there no talk about the new site for the cell tower at the property on Route 35 between the animal hospital and Bountonville Road. Like where is that going to come into the picture? So I'm neither for it or against it, but it's just a concern that I have. Thank you.
So Carol, let me just answer that question about the cell tower. So the first that was presented to us was at the Antenna Advisory Board meeting about 2 weeks ago. So that's where it was first presented to the town or the advisory board committee.
I understand.
Which you were
that,
on. You were on that in that meeting.
I was on that meeting, but apparently a lot of people don't know about this new development.
Well, we don't have a proposal yet from Homeland or if it's even going to be considered. So they're still talking to the carriers before any
Well,
final.
and also what the citizens need to know is that it's on a state-owned piece of property, which again is beneficial to the town. Because that's, where the town always goes on state-owned property.
Well, it's actually a town-owned property, but
Town-owned property. For the benefit of the income. But, I would just like to, this information should be brought out more informative and more public.
so once we know
Nobody
more,
knows it.
we'll let you know. We're, like I said, they're waiting for the carriers to AT&T approved it. They're still waiting on Verizon.
Okay, and while I have you on the phone, Tony, can you answer whether or not the town owns the mulch piles at the Salt Dome, or whether Hickory Homes owns them?
We're so one way or another, that mulch pile is going to go away. And
It doesn't matter.
And
Who
again, I
owns
don't.
it?
Yeah, so based on the email that you referred to before, the Hickory Homes owns it.
So the town is putting out an RFP to remove the material that is being deposited by Hickory Homes.
So we wanted to get an idea of what it's going to cost, correct? And that'll help us with our decision making.
Okay, so the town of Lewisboro and taxpayers are on the hook for removing Hickory Homes material.
Not yet.
No, it's just, we want to know how much it's going to cost, what the value of the removal is. That's all.
So you're asking people to bid on something that is not going to be rewarded?
Carol, when we get all the details, we'll share it with the public.
And we'll also get input from counsel from applicable legal issues as we go through the process.
Exactly. My question before was for Greg. Who owns the pile?
We'll get back to you, Carol, once we get all the input.
Well, I think I'll get back to you to pursue my follow-up, but thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
We'll be in touch. Thanks.
Thanks, Carol. That's it.
That's it? Okay. So, okay, motion to approve claims
I have something I want to bring up on this.
on the claims?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to have an opposite motion not to approve claim number 60718, which is for the $10,000 in monthly rent for LES, which we pay to the school district. As I understand it, under the New York State education law, we have a requirement that we have to pay essentially market value for that space, which is $10,000 a month for the town. However, as I see it, the fact that we have to pay market value means that we're supposed to get something back, and means we're supposed to have a landlord that's supposed to take reasonable care of that property, as any landlord would be in any kind of commercial setting. And in speaking to people here and people who work for the town in that facility, we have broken men's door, we have men's room door, sorry. Frequent losing of heat, water leaks recently of 1,000 or 2,000 gallons, which is not has not been accounted for. No hot water, which has been the situation for years. Some issues with sheetrock in offices, which have had to have been covered up, flooding, leaking gutters causing issues. As far as I'm concerned, that's not acceptable. Tony's done a good job in reaching out to the school district as far as a facilities person to try and get that taken care of. But as far as I'm concerned, we're paying rent, and we should have a reasonably safe place for the people in our town to work, and people of the public to come frequent as they need to do their business as citizens. So as far as I'm making a motion that we should not pay our $10,000 a month rent until we get some attention from our landlord.
To add to Rich, I know that the police department's been in need of a generator. And basically, it's my understanding that the school district won't allow for it unless the town also pays for a generator that services some of I think the hot water heater and the furnace in the main building, which in turn could be around $100,000 of an expense to the town for a generator that we just really, for the town's needs, we need to make sure that our police department is up and running 24/7 and has a generator so that they can continue to service the town. So I think that's a little harsh.
Yeah, and I'll just add to the discussion. So I did reach out to the facilities director after going on a tour of the building and noting all these items that Rich mentioned. So our next plan is to go there with our facilities manager, facilities director, and together with one of the maintenance people from the school district, and determine next steps. Generator is that's a good point that we need to take a look at. But yeah, we need to have these issues addressed. I personally have not been able to get on the calendar this next meeting with them, but that is the plan to do that soon.
Can we hold off paying that line until the next meeting?
I guess we can. Leo, can we hold off on?
It's a check.
Not in the mail yet? Okay.
Yeah, and I was talking about our town employees, I'm including obviously the police department as well.
Right.
So, and also this is an unfair burden that it places on Joel, that we have town employees who are coming and doing the work of what the landlord should do as far as maintenance and repair issues. That's taking away from town facilities. And this is something we pay rent for. It's just not right and it's not fair. We should get what we're paying for. That's how I see it anyway.
Is there anything particular in the lease that speaks to any of this?
I don't know if that's something I was gonna, if we had the discussion today, that's something we need to look at. Yeah.
Well, if anybody could show me a commercial lease where you take care of everything in exchange for rent, then somebody did a bad job negotiating the lease. So again, as was suggested, I have a motion to defer payment of that based upon your meeting, and we could take it up and catch things up next month or next meeting, actually in a couple of weeks.
I'll second.
Subject to that, I'll make a motion to approve all the other claims.
Second.
All in favor to approve all the claims except this one monthly rent to KLSD?
Aye.
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 The only thing I would say is that maybe before you do look at lease.
Correct, yes. So we'll, yes, you're right. So we'll do that. Okay. So that was claims. Polling of the board. I'll start with you, Mr. Slaren.
Oh, okay. I have a few items. Good evening, everybody. First of all, we had a terrific new resident reception yesterday at Honor Troop, which was Mary was there with me. We had lots of town people out in full force. I think we must have had close to a dozen new couples and families. Yeah, it was packed, and it was packed. It was a great event. Lots of people from the town. Food was donated by Horse and Hound. Thank you for that. And Salem Wine and Liquors for the adult beverages also. So it was a good time yesterday, and it was great to see new residents, and obviously that Dana and Michael make that happen with Parks and Rec. And I think this is the third one I've attended since I've been in the town board position, and it's great. New energy, new people coming to the community, all ages, all backgrounds, all places, and it was a great time, and I'm glad that I was there. Follow-up, I'm making a follow-up request for any letters of interest regarding, we talked about the potential formation of a diversity, equality, and inclusion committee in Lewisboro. Again, want to renew a request. Anybody interested, please forward a letter of interest to anyone here on the town board, or approach anybody privately if you're more comfortable, whatever you're comfortable in doing. Just letting everybody know I'm highway liaison, as you heard earlier. I sent a letter to the highway department earlier today. I have some concerns about the snowstorm protocol, so I've sent that letter out, and hopefully we'll get some responsive information so we could take a look at issues associated with that. There's a letter which I wanted to read, which came to both members of KLSD administrators, as well as some of us on the town board. This is from Linda Press-Wolf in Cross River. We are appalled at the news that a JJ middle school individual scrawled a swastika on the boys' bathroom wall. You speak of diversity committees and panels. However, it is evident that not enough has been shared and taught in the KLSD about the horrors of the Holocaust, and as a result has not discouraged actions of this sort to occur. We reside in Cross River. My husband, Henry Wolf, is a Holocaust survivor. And just so if people don't know, Henry Wolf has been the executive director for LCDV for, I think, 17 years, I'm sorry. A rescued hidden child. His background and story has been covered in many writings and publications, some of which were translated into several languages. Most recently, his story, as well as those of 50 other World War II Jewish war orphans, also hidden children, were covered extensively in the book referenced in the link below. We receive no compensation for his participation in these books, nor any proceeds from book sales. Instead, like many other Holocaust victims, their quest is, quote, never forget, close quote. This book or others like it should be required reading at the middle and high school levels. Your educational curriculum, diversity committees or panels should also include discussions of the persecution of Jews, as well as recent and relentless anti-Semitism seen throughout the US and the rest of the world. At the least, once discovered, this individual owes Henry, as well as other Holocaust survivors, an apology. And item last, our thoughts are with people in Ukraine, and our hearts and minds and thoughts are with these people who are in a battle for their country and in a quest to have a democratic society. And our prayers and hopes and aspirations are with them. Thank you.
Mary?
To add to the New Neighbor Network event, it was a very diverse group of people, and there were representatives from a variety of services, including the library director at the welcoming event. And Cindy Rubino said that it was there were already 4 families who have applied for new library cards today. So it was a very, very positive event. For camp registration, for main event Little Explorers and after camp care, registration will start the Monday, April 18th. We will take as many campers as we can until April 30th. And starting May 2nd, will be on availability of space only. More information can be found in the spring summer 2022 brochure that will be out mid-March. And on a related note, they're accepting summer employment applications for day camp positions and pool positions. Anyone interested can go to the website lewisbororecreation.com to counselors, lifeguards, camp specialists, pool gate attendants, just to name a few. And senior citizens are back to meeting weekly at the South Salem Fire Department. Anyone over the age of 55 is welcome to join in on the socialization, educational opportunities, and celebrations that they have on Wednesdays. And if you look at the Parks and Recs website, they'll have trips for people over 50 as well. And the library is having 2 events coming up. The first in-person author event is on Sunday, the 6th. And it's Fiona Davis, who is a New York Times bestseller author and also a resident of Lewisboro. And then on
Is there a time on that, Mary?
Yes, there is. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. And on the following Sunday, the 13th of March, our wonderful historian Maureen Cole will be giving a talk about historic town quilts. So please register for those events. And I second the thoughts that Rich has given on the plight of the people of Ukraine, as well as the loved ones that are not there.
Thank you, Mary. Andrea?
Well, first of all, thoughts and prayers with the people of Ukraine. And I just like to say, in times like these, putting aside political differences, criticisms of our government, of our various presidents, our varying opinions, I am definitely grateful and very appreciative to be living right here. So, we don't know what it's like to be over there. For a brief time, my family and I lived in London, and it gave us a very different perspective over violence in countries nearby. We living here in the United States have a huge buffer between us and what goes on in the Middle East and places like Ukraine. When you live in London and you realize that conflict is only a couple hours away, it gives you a different perspective as to what the rest of the world goes through. So again, very grateful and appreciative to be living here.
Dan?
Yeah, I hope the war ends immediately soon. And I hope that in the year 2022 that we can finally find different ways to resolve these things rather than the use of military action, which generally just hurts the most vulnerable. But just to add a point to the reminder about the diversity committee, we did get some thoughtful feedback by email with a suggestion that we should be thinking also about engaging some qualified professional assistants to help us organize around that, because it's important to do it right, training and things like that. So I think we should keep that in mind and go back to that email and give it some thought.
Thanks, Dan. I have a couple of things here. The town just posted a new job for a recreation supervisor for Lewisboro Parks and Recreation Department. Please be advised that it is a civil service title with certain requirements needed for the position. For more information, please email or call the Parks and Recreation Department for details or to receive the job posting. Resumes are being accepted until Friday, March 11th. The playground, the Lewisboro Town Park Playground Committee had such a great response to the Levier mark in the park that they are still accepting brick orders until May 1st. Please go to their website, www.lewisboroplayground.com, for more information to order brick. They are also offering kid, couple, or family portraits at their next fundraiser with or without the Lewisboro bunny in a picture or two, which could make a great Mother's Day gift, anniversary gifts, birthday gifts, or just have an updated professional shot of the family for the wall. Look for an email blast, which is going out this week about it. We are happy to report that the playground bid documents are being prepared now for the installation of the playground, which we hope will happen sometime towards the latter part of August and September timeframe. Equipment should be here in the late summer, so not to interrupt our favorite time to be in Town Park, June, July, and August. Next is the Recreation Baseball Championships are coming up at John Jay High School on Sunday, March 13th, 2022, after a near normal season. We have a great day planned with a DJ, professional announcer, and a bit of our own basketball March Madness. All are welcome to come out and support the playoff final between two teams in each division. That's all from Parks and Rec. So, and of course, thoughts and prayers are with the people of Ukraine. Thanks, Robert Whitaker, for saying a few words about that. I think I was in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, and it was interesting to see. I actually drove by both embassies, and from the Russian embassy, of course, there were a lot of signs. I'm not going to repeat what they said regarding Vladimir Putin. And it's, to contrast that, driving by the Ukrainian embassy, there was a huge outpouring of people just dropping off flowers and holding up supportive signs indicating their support. So I think the world is recognizing who Vladimir Putin really is, and the type of person he is. So if there's any silver lining to this, it's that. So thank you all very much. Anything?
One thing I forgot is to voice our appreciation for those who serve and to recognize that there are many families whose loved ones are in the service, and we appreciate their commitment to democracy. And that also I know through Global Health, people from Russia who are shocked and embarrassed by it. So it's not the people of Russia who are doing this, but Putin.
That's correct. Thank you. Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say anything here, but when Rich was talking about the diversity thing, and it brought to my mind back in the 90s when my kid was in school here, and there was a Black man who came to talk about race relations to the students. And at the end of the first day, he was talking for 2 days, and after the end of the first day, he talked briefly about mixed marriages, that idea, that concept. And He came back the next day to talk, and before he did so, one administrator came and told him that he should not go into that kind of thing because they'd gotten some complaints from the parents and that was just sort of out of bounds. I was always been upset with myself and others that we didn't, having heard about that, say something about it. That kind of attitude I still think exists in this community. And I think that the courage that you're going to take in doing this, it's going to need courage. And it's going to need some responsibility and some bravery because that attitude is still there. It still exists in community. And that's what you're going to be talking about. And I appreciate personally your willingness to do that. It's about time that we did that. But it's important and we need to do it. And thank you.
You're welcome, Robert. Okay,
Next meeting.
I don't have any announcements from anyone regarding anything else though. So the next town board meeting is Monday, March 14, 2022 at 7:30 PM at the Lewisboro Library. Motion to go into executive session
Second,
to interview people for committees.
personnel.
Advice of council.
Okay.
I have one for advice of council.
Oh, okay, okay. Second discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Get home safe,
Everyone on Zoom.
everyone.